Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Why. This week we have a double parsha, Behar Bechokotai, and discusses a number of things. Discusses things like the Meiser, or tithing, charity. Also discusses the Shemitah year, the seventh year in the agricultural cycle where the land would be left fallow. And I want to talk about charity, though. I want to talk about Meiser, which was tithing, which is really charity. So in Leviticus 27, it basically describes that 10% of your flock would be given. And so this is the basis for the modern Jewish law. We have to give 10% of our income to charity. And it's very much connected, I think, to the fact that we are also told about the Shemitah year, the seventh year, where we have to leave the land fallow. And so there's a couple ideas when it comes to charity that for a lot of people, even ones who give to charity, it can become a little troublesome, or at least problematic. So one of them is that, why should I give to charity? I know, or at least 10%, I know that I earned my money. I know that I went into work, and I know what my hourly billable rate or salary or wage is, and I know that I've earned my money, so why do I need to give 10% away to the community? And the second one is, if God can create the heavens and the earth, as we read earlier in Genesis, why does He now need me to give money to the poor or give it to somebody? I mean, God conceivably can do it Himself. So there's two ideas to this. Is that there's a reason that ultimately, when it comes to why, in other words, why do I have to do it myself? I mean, why couldn't God simply do it Himself? Is that it's the same ultimately as with Shabbat and with the Shemitah year, the seventh year, is that God, on the seventh day of creation, He didn't rest. He didn't get tired. He simply ceased creating. And so what that means is that we today recognize and commemorate that by basically saying is that, you know what, on the seventh day, on Saturday, we don't need to work because we know God's going to protect us, because we know God is going to sustain us and God is going to create. And so God is going to maintain it. And so this is why we don't need to do that. And so it's the same idea when it comes to charity, is that not giving to charity, it's the same idea, because it's supposed to basically be saying is that you know that God created everything. You know that it's not up to you. And that especially because it's an agricultural system, you don't have to be a religious person or not to know that it wasn't totally up to you. You can water, and you can plant, and you can try to make sure, but you know what? A sandstorm comes out of nowhere, and nothing you can do about that. Or a drought comes out of nowhere, and tough. And so I think that the lesson here is supposed to be that ultimately we can't possibly be in full control of it. And it's supposed to be an idea that, you know what, just as everything you have is a gift, you are supposed to recognize that ultimately 10% of your money isn't yours to begin with. And so that's the perspective that we're supposed to have. Not that we're giving away our money. It was never ours to begin with. And that's the whole idea of it. And the second idea, of course, is that, well, you know what, couldn't God simply do it Himself? Good question. So couldn't God simply give the money to charity or help people or organizations? Or He certainly could. But the idea here, I think, is not so much for their benefit as it is for ours. Because in theory, of course, He could simply snap His proverbial fingers and make it happen. The reason that we are given this opportunity is that we are supposed to get something out of it, right? When it comes to sacrifices or kosher laws or prayer or charity, God gets nothing out of this, we do. And so the lesson that we're supposed to take out of this is connected to Maimonides. Maimonides talked about the 8 levels of charity. And Maimonides said the lowest level of charity was giving begrudgingly. You don't really want to give, you give because you have to. And the reason for that is because they're not getting something out of it. It's not because they're an evil, wicked person. They're still giving to charity. They're still getting the benefit. In other words, they're getting the mitzvah, but they're not getting the benefit out of it. And the benefit is that when we give to charity, we know not only do you get mitzvah points and brownie points and you're fulfilling a mitzvah and all of that, from a purely selfish perspective, you are getting fulfillment and happiness and joy, and that's the something that technically is that you are getting a tangible, valuable return on your investment. The same way that, for example, somebody who has children knows that, for every dollar they spent on their children, they've gotten $10 back return, in the joy and the companionship and everything they've gotten from the children. So, in other words, if they had kept it because they wanted to save that, $1 million they spent on children, well, they've made millions back in return. So, in other words, it's not that we are giving to charity because we're nice, good people. Of course, we're doing it because we're supposed to, and we're supposed to help those less fortunate. But ultimately, the perspective that even we can come from it as is that, on one hand, God gives us the opportunity because no one else is going to do it. So that's one, it's a very empowering thing to know that when no one else is doing it, it falls on us. But secondly is that we get something out of it. We get an incredible joy and happiness, and that if we're not getting something out of it, like Maimonides says, the lowest level, he's missing something. And he's missing something, it's tragic and it's sad for him. Not for the poor people. The poor people will get if God decrees that they get. But for the guy who's not giving, or who's giving begrudgingly, he needs to recalibrate his thoughts, because giving to charity should be giving you way, way more than what you're giving. And if we can understand that that's the way it's supposed to be, and this is the way that it's described, we're going to get an awful lot out of it. So that's it. Best wishes. Shabbat Shalom. God bless.